All right, next up we have Shaman, and kicking things off with a good one, the quest, Corrupt the Waters. The quest is play 6 Battlecry cards, and the reward is Heart of Virnal, which makes your Battlecries trigger twice when you activate it. So this card is nuts. I think this very well may just be the best quest. It's like easy to complete. You know, playing 6 Battlecry cards is like really straightforward, right? Especially when you have stuff like Sludge Slurper and Evil Cable Rat, which are Battlecry cards that give you another Battlecry card. And there's just a ton you can do with it. There's just so many powerful Battlecries that you just can continue to sort of chain up as you go. Like, so powerful with Lackeys, so powerful with, like, even if you like keep the coin, you can like double Shutterwalk. Like, it's just like this card just seems super good. And, like, imagine, like, Shark Rogue that just always had Shark in play, right? Like, it's so powerful. I feel like this is very likely to just be one of the strongest decks in the expansion. I wouldn't be surprised if this, if Corrupt the Waters, like, Quest Shaman ends up being, like, tier 1. Shaman also just has a lot of tools that make it very strong against a lot of the decks that already exist. Right, like the Plague of Murlocs, but in a deck that has like a bunch of like Lackeys and stuff anyway, that you're just playing out a bunch of small things. Plague of Murloc gives you a great way to deal with, an opponent who plays out like, conjuring giants, whatever. You're like, okay, well here you go, have a bunch of Murlocs, and you just have like lots of very very strong tools to deal with all these sort of things. So I just think that this is likely to be one of, if not like the best cards in the entire expansion, and I think that this a deck built around this, is very likely to be like at or near the top of the ranks in whatever you consider tiers and whatnot. I think it's just like likely to be a super powerful deck that can do all sorts of really cool things. All right, next up we have Earthquake. As I said when this card was revealed, I really wish this did 5 than 3 or 6 than 2, because having a 7-cost AoE that clears my own board and can't kill giants in a world with Conjurer's Calling and giants, it's just real sad. I think that if this did 1 more damage, this card would be amazing. As it is, it's like fine. I think it's like it's a good card against decks that have death rattles, but not necessarily all of them, right? It's not a good card against Mechano Egg or Mechanical Whelp or whatever else. Obviously, like, you can get spell power with this or whatever, but like that makes it cost more, and you're very likely dead to giants before you can like roll a spell power totem and then play an Earthquake, or like play it like Thalnos Earthquake on 9. Yes, you can kill a board of giants, but if they happen to be sea giant and they got bigger things, well, you don't even kill them then. So I think this is like it's cool. It can clear like Reborn minions. It can clear like Soul of the Forest. Good in that sense. But I feel like it's very difficult to play in a world where it doesn't clear Giant Calling, when I think that's still likely to be one of the most important things for your big effects to do. Next up we have Evil Totem. And your turn, add a Lackey to your hand. This is, a pretty strong card, assuming you are playing as an opponent who can't kill it. It's like, if they can't kill it immediately, you're getting 2 Lackeys from this, which is pretty crazy. I wonder if this is a card that you want in your Battlecry deck, if you're playing the Battlecry quest. You play the quest turn 1, play this turn 2, you get 1 thing off of it. If they don't kill it, you get another. I don't know how many Lackey generators you want in that deck, because you already have Sludge Slurper, Evil Cable Rat, which are naturally already Battlecry minions, so they give you multiple triggers to your quest no matter what. But overall, I think this is a pretty neat card. Obviously, you don't just like play this in like any Shaman deck, right? You have to specifically care about the Lackeys that you're getting. You have to care about them either for their Battlecries or for Lackey synergies with like Wasp or whatever else. I think this is just generally like a solid utility card for those decks that do care about the Lackeys. And I expect to see like medium play. I would have said I expect to see like more play, I think, except I'm unconvinced that you want this in the Battlecry quest deck, because I think that you want to spend your mana on Battlecries very frequently in the early turns of the game, and like you want to actually be advancing it so you get the quest online quickly, and spending an early turn like just getting another Battlecry card with the Evil Totem, I feel like is not necessarily advisable. I feel like you're better off just actually having a Battlecry minion, like even just like a Menacing Nimbus, that's what it is. It's Murmuring Elemental, Menacing Nimbus. That's the card I was thinking of. So yeah, I feel like the sort of tempo of spending your mana on Battlecry minions to get that online is probably more important than the possibility of just getting 2 ticks of it from this if it survives the turn. You know, you'd rather have Evil Cable Rat in that deck than this because of the double Battlecry trigger. So I'm unconvinced this necessarily has a home as a result of just how powerful the Battlecry quest is, even though it does give you those Battlecry minions with the lackeys. Next up we have Mogu Flesh Shaper. 7 cost Rush, costs 1 less for each minion in the battlefield. Kind of a weird card. I feel like this is pretty much intended to be like a card that you mutate. That you're playing like a Swarm deck that has Mutate, and you're like, okay, Flesh Shaper, kill your guy, mutate it. But yeah, this is sort of a weird card. Outside of Mutate, this was a hard card to like figure out how, like, where this, like, you know, necessarily wants to go. I mean, it's very similar to a, you know, Rabble Bouncer, except it is, you know, a 3/4 rush instead of, I mean, it's identical, right? It's 3/4 rush instead of 2/7 taunt. If you are planning on mutating right away, you'd definitely rather play this because you get value out of it attacking. You want to definitely be playing a deck that's like building a big board yourself. Probably doesn't go into, you know, the Battlecry deck, doesn't have Battlecry, but could easily go into, you know, a deck with just, that's looking to play out like the totem with a bunch of lackeys and things, and then mutating stuff. But again, like maybe the mutate deck feels like it wants to be a former champ deck, which wants to be a Battlecry deck, which wants to be a quest deck, which means that maybe there isn't room for this. I don't know. You know, I think that if there are more evolve effects that come out, this card's going to get much more attractive. With just Mutate right now, and obviously the Lackey, Witchy Lackey as well. Specifically the fact that this costs 7 means that it goes 7 to 8, and 8's one of the best points to actually go to. If this was like 6, it'd actually be worse. Like, even if it was cheaper, you know, it would like mutate worse, because 7's a bad mutate number. So yeah, this works very well with like Thunderhead, with Voltaic Burst, a lot of ways that you can get this down. So maybe you're playing like an overload mutate deck rather than playing the quest, and you're just like more of a tempo-oriented deck. That's where I can see this. Okay, you're playing like mutate slash like board flood slash Stormbringer. I can buy it. I can see that working. That's the deck. I don't know if you have that much incentive to play that over the Battlecry quest. It's a different deck. Feels like probably better against aggro, worse against control. All right, I see it coming together in my brain. Do you see it? Do you see it, chat? Or viewer, if you're on YouTube? What would you even call that? The combination of chat / viewer. I guess it'd just be viewer either place. You, out there, in the ether. Ooh. That's enough of that weirdness. Moving on. Okay, next up we have Plague of Murlocs. I mentioned this earlier. 3-cost spell, transform all minions to random Murlocs. So, this card is obviously fantastic against like Conjurer's Calling decks. You know, against any deck that has like big stuff, right? Like a lot of big stuff. Against Death Rattles, this card is just really good. If you are looking to react to your opponent playing big stuff or buffed stuff, expensive stuff, whatever else. It's very similar to like Devolve, except, you know, it's better against big things than Devolve ever was. It hits your own stuff, which means that you probably don't want to be playing this when you have a bunch of big stuff. So, you know, but you could easily play this, like, say you have a board of small things, your opponent has a bunch of big things, you're like, okay, Plague of Murlocs, and then Stormbringer, now I have a bunch of big things. So, I think this card's just, like, super cool. It's like, not, like, obviously bananas powerful, because it's really situational. Your opponent has to have big stuff in order for this to be good. I mean, you could even just play this in a Murloc deck, right? You play this in a Murloc deck, so when you get Murlocs, you're like, okay, I'll buff my Murlocs. But overall, yeah, I think this is, like, super cool. I think it's better than, like, most other sort of things like this we've seen before. Like, Druid had Poison Seeds before, right? And Poison Seeds was, like, really good against a bunch of big things, but it's bad against Death Rattles. This is great against Death Rattles. You know, your opponent has, you know, all the mechs in the world, and it's like, okay, transform them all. They're all Murlocs, they're all dead. I just think that, generally speaking, this is just, like, really powerful, solves a lot of the problems that I think exist in the metagame of just, like, building giant mechs in Paladin, building, you know, boards full of giants and mage, whatever else. Super cool. I like it, and I expect to see a lot of play because I expect giants and callings to still be everywhere. All right, next up is Sandstorm Elemental. Do. What's that card name? 2-cost Elemental, Battlecry, deal 1, Overload 1. So this is, I think, fine. I was playing with this in my Overload Shaman deck, my Battlecry Shaman, and it was fine. It was very situational. Obviously, like, you know, with the double battle cries, it becomes much more impactful. You know, especially with multiples of them, you can just flame strike your opponent out or whatever. But it is definitely something that, like, you don't have too many effects like this that are like situational battle cries, especially as like situational battle cries with overload, that you're relying on to get your quest online as well. You can't really think about this as a 2-drop, right? When you're building like a battlecry shaman deck, you really want like more things to play on too, like Novice Engineer or Menacing Nimbus. I was like Murmuring Thing again, Menacing Nimbus, whatever else, things that actually you could easily play proactively without disrupting your middle turns. Yeah, this is very similar to like a Maelstrom Portal, and I think that fits very similarly in terms of like what does a metagame look like that you want a Maelstrom Portal, and you know, if there's a very aggressive metagame, this card's going to be great. If there isn't, it's going to largely sit in your hand and maybe activate your Battlecry quest, or wait until you have completed your Battlecry quest and then wipe your opponent's board. Next up is Splitting Axe. 4-cost 3/2 weapon, Battlecry, summon copies of your totems. I kind of wish this was Death Rattle. Summon copies of your totems. Because I feel like actually playing out the totems that you want to copy, you know, buffing your totems, things like that, like being able to swing this and then have your turn of like playing out stuff and then summoning your totems would be like cooler. It's definitely more powerful, I think, as Battlecry or as Death Rattle. Well, not definitely, because, you know, obviously situationally it's different. But this card seems interesting. Like, maybe you actually build a totem deck. I think this is at its best with just Nightmare Amalgam. You're just like turn 3 Nightmare Amalgam. Maybe you can buff it somehow. Then you're like, okay, Splitting Axe. Haha. Multiple amalgams. But most of the time, you're going to need, like, you know, totems that you actually spend cards and mana for in order for this to be any good. If Flame Tongue still costs 2, Splitting Axe your Flame Tongues would be kind of sick. But yeah, I don't know that there's enough totems, enough value totems, enough powerful totems to really justify trying to build a totem deck even with Splitting Axe. I guess, like, Mana Tide into this, kind of sweet, but you're just going to deck yourself. There is the new card, which we'll actually get to in just a second, which definitely makes Splitting Axe more exciting, which is this, Totemic Surge. Totemic Surge and Totemic Might, you know, their powers combined, and you have, you know, Totemic Bolster, or whatever. But the fact that this does cost 0 means that you can, you know, play your Splitting Axe, buff them, actually get people. I find it, like, pretty difficult to imagine a world in which, like, this actually works very well. I don't know. All the good totems, what totems are there that you can actually play? There's Evil Totem, there's Mana Tide Totem, there's Flame Tongue Totem, there's Nightmare Amalgam. There's not really other totems, right? There's no, I can't think of another totem that's currently legal. So, yeah, I mean, if you do end up with, like, a board of totems, you can, like, Totemic Surge them and double them or whatever, but how much value are you actually getting from that? I feel like you really need to basically have, like, a buffed Nightmare Amalgam to really get a good value from, like, the Splitting Axe and Totemic Surge and whatever else. Oh, yeah, the Hench Clan Witch or whatever makes totems. That's interesting. Maybe there's something there. My gut is that this is not, like, close to good enough, especially because, like, board space issues, if you're just, like, you know, trying to Splitting Axe and have a bunch of stuff seems unlikely. But this I think is more likely to be a card that actually matters, right? Like, 0 cost, give your totems +2 attack. 0 is, like, you know, that's as low as it goes. Yeah, you could actually get some, if you actually get some value even just from your hero power or from, like, you know, all little dudes from your Hench Clan Witch or whatever, that can go somewhere maybe, but probably not. Or can you? Vicina! While you're overloaded, your other minions have +2 attack. Hey, totems! What's up? We play Vicina, we overload, our totems get you. If anything, this is actually possibly, like, a more important card to those, like, totem decks, because, you know, this works on your totems. This card is extremely powerful, right? When you're overloaded, your other minions have +2 attack. That is a passive effect. You play this, your minions have +2 attack. Like imagine just having a Thunderhead in play, right? And you're like, okay, your Thunderhead lives. You're like, and your opponent plays some stuff. You're like, all right, Vicina, and then I'll play Voltaic Burst. Okay, I kill all of your giants, right? It's crazy. Like, that's crazy. Even without a Thunderhead, just Vicina and Voltaic Burst is, you know, 6. You do 6 damage with your Voltaic Burst for 1 mana. It's just really powerful. So this, I think, is super strong. Like, this looks to me like the sort of card that can make, like, Overload Shaman into, like, a legit, really scary deck that can take advantage of the Thunderhead tokens, that can take advantage of just having totems in play. One of the biggest problems with Shaman since the nerf to Flame Tongue is that your totems suck. Like, most of the times your totems just don't do very much at all. Oftentimes they're just like taking up board space, right? Like, unless you have Bloodlust, unless you have Stormbringer, your totems mostly suck. And this changes that, right? This actually makes all of your totems very valuable, makes all your Thunderhead tokens very valuable. Just like, it is just a really powerful card. I think this is super strong. I feel like Shaman got like some of the best cards in this set. I think they have the best quest. I think this is like one of the best just like all around like impactful cards in a bunch of different archetypes. And last but not least, Weaponized Wasp. So 3-cost 3/3 Battlecry. If you control a Lackey, deal 3. This is, very powerful card in a Battlecry deck. Battlecry with the quest. You can Wasp people, like you can play your things that make Lackeys on like, turn 2, turn 3. Turn 4, you play your Lackey and you Wasp them, or you wait until you complete your quest. You're like, all right, Wasp you for 6. And this card's just like very, very strong. One of the things is like this actually, having multiple Weaponized Wasps in your deck does make it so that you can really be in a difficult spot in terms of enabling it. If you just play Sludge Slurper, and Evil Cable Rat, you only have 4 Lackeys, right? And if you want to like Weaponized Wasp, you have 2 Weaponized Wasps. It's not like Togwaggle where you're like, okay, I have a Togwaggle, and Togwaggle is super impactful, so I'm going to make sure to hold on to one of these Lackeys. Like, you're playing the quest itself, which gives you pressure to try and actually play out your battle cries to get to that point. So, in my experience, very limited, mind you, just during the theory crafting session thing, I found Wasp to be less reliable than I had hoped. I wasn't playing Evil Totem in that deck, but I was playing all 4 of the other Lackey generators. And maybe Weaponized Wasp makes it so that you want to play some Evil Totems as well. But as I mentioned before, when we were talking about the quest and the totem, I'm not convinced that that's necessarily the case because of the mana expenditure that isn't going into Battlecry minions. So maybe what you want to do is just play like more card draw effects like Novice Engineers, right? And like the Questing Explorer, in order to actually ensure that you get deeper into your deck and find your Wasp alongside your Lackeys when you need them. All right, next up is Warlock. And our first Warlock card is Legendary Dark Pharaoh Takan. This is a 5-cost 4/4 with Battlecry. For the rest of the game, your Lackeys are 4/4. So this is, basically Crystal Core. It's back. It's back. I hate you, Crystal Core. But I don't hate this nearly as much as Crystal Core for a number of reasons. One, it only affects your Lackeys. None of those have Charge. None of those have Rush. And also, you have to draw this card. In the games where you don't draw this card, you don't have access to the Crystal Core like you did before. So, I think this card's cool. Like, I think that making the Warlock sort of zoo-ish deck care about Lackeys, playing more things to generate Lackeys, more things to sacrifice Lackeys, more things that power up your Lackeys, I think is really interesting. It is pretty sick that your Lackeys can work with the Magic Carpet. So you can have a bunch of Lackeys, and then, they're all 4/4, and then they're 5/4 Rush. But it requires, pieces coming together and everything like that. So I think this card is likely to be pretty powerful. I think that the Lackey synergies that exist in Warlock, as well as the Lackey generation that exists in Warlock, are all sufficient to sort of push zoo-ish decks to possibly look to going in the Lackey direction. And if they do, I think this is definitely something that you are very excited about having in your deck and drawing and blowing your opponent up with. So, very cool card, and I think it will certainly see play in aggressive Warlock variants. Next up, we have Diseased Vulture. It's a 4-cost 3/5 beast. After your hero takes damage on your turn, summon a random 3-cost minion. I think this is another direction you can take. You can take a sort of mid-range Warlock deck. I can imagine like a zoo deck that's looking to be like a Magic Carpet deck, that wants all the Lackey stuff going on. If you're not looking to go the Lackey direction, you can play like a Flame Imp deck with this, where you're like, okay, I Flame Imp and get a guy, or I like just play this out, then I Life Tap, or I Spirit Bomb. A lot of things that care about sort of the self-damage. And again, I feel like that would want to be very much like a mid-range type deck, not like ultra-aggressive, which maybe isn't necessarily, as powerful, simply because the ultra-aggressive decks can leverage Life Tap much better. But I do feel like this card is pretty strong. A 3/5 for 4 is like, totally normal utility-ish minion stats. And the fact that, this can generate a big board pretty readily, if you, like, say in one turn, you play this, you Spirit Bomb and you Flame Imp. Like that's, you've just made a 3/5, a 3/2, and 2 more 3-drops. And, granted, we live in a world with Warpath and Brawl, so maybe that's not really good enough. But in a lot of matchups, that can do quite a bit to swing the board. Next up is Evil Recruiter, a 3-cost 3/3 with Battlecry. Destroy a friendly lackey to summon a 5/5 demon. So I do find it kind of funny this is, recruiting by sacrificing and summoning. You'd think like the recruiter would be like, hey, I want you to come join the team, come be our lackey. No, he's recruiting demons by feeding them lackeys. So yeah, I think this card is quite powerful. I was talking about with the legendary, how aggressive version of Warlock would very likely, lean on the lackey synergies. This is one of the other reasons. Being able to essentially play a 4-cost 8/8, right? You're playing a 5/5 and a 3/3 while sacrificing a 1/1. So whatever, you do the math. Ends up being very powerful. That can be a huge swing early in the game. And if you on turn 3, you could even like play your lackey, coin this, just big swing. It is separated into 2 bodies, so your opponent can kill the 5/5 with say a militia commander, and you don't have the full 8 power left. You're left with a 3/3. But either way, it's just a very powerful card. I think that this is going to see quite a bit of play in those sort of aggressive lackey decks, will be very strong. Next up, we have Expired Merchant, 2-cost 2/1. Battlecry, discard your highest cost card. Death Rattle, add 2 copies of it to your hand. So this is a really interesting card. This is very open-ended. I can see this card, being used for a bunch of different things. The sort of thing that jumps out the most to me is just Mountain Giant, right? Like, you're playing a handlock style deck, you play this, you can make an extra Mountain Giant, it dies, you've got a bunch of Mountain Giants. You can even just like play it and Mortal Coil it yourself. Great, now you've got your Mountain Giants, and you drew it immediately, didn't risk it possibly being silenced. But yeah, I think it's definitely a very cool card. You can use it like in Wild with Gul'dan. You get multiple Gul'dans, so you can just keep summoning boards full of demons. But yeah, overall, I think this is like a super cool card with tons of open-ended potential. Like I don't know that necessarily just immediately slots into any existing like Warlock decks now, but like it has just like so many different things that you can possibly do with it that I think it'll definitely see play somewhere because it can do a lot of crazy stuff. Next up, we have Imp Balming. 4-cost spell, destroy a minion, shuffle 3 worthless imps into your deck. So this is a really interesting card, and when I first saw this, I was like, haha, you can use this with Rafam, and it's cool, it gives you more stuff in your deck. And I was mostly thinking of that as like, kind of this, funny corner case, like weird scenario that would rarely come up. And then, yesterday, I was playing the Theory Crafting stream thing, and I was playing Plutus Warlock. And the Plutus Warlock deck that I was playing actually leaned on Rafam to win the game very frequently and would lose some games to fatigue. So I was thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? This is actually a deck where I could really use Imp Balming. Like, you're playing a deck that has like a significant number of expensive cards. Like being able to play the 6-cost Reborn Death Rattle guy, or like the 4-cost Reborn Taunt guy, and use your special life tap, cost 0, and then Imp Balming something. I actually think this is a totally reasonable card to like legit just play in that deck as an anti-fatigue tool that's also like a powerful removal effect. So my initial instinct in this was like, haha, funny to that like use with Rafam. And the more I think about it, the more I think this is a card I actually want to put into my Plot Twist Warlock deck, like for real. So yeah, I think this card is really interesting, and even just like very briefly playing, not even playing with the card, but playing with the deck that draws a ton of cards, then Rafam's. Made it feel like this could very legitimately be something that I want to play in that deck. So a day ago, I would have said, unlikely to ever really see play. And today I'm like, well, this is probably going to be in the first deck I build tomorrow. By tomorrow, I mean when the set comes out. All right, next up we have Neferset Thrasher. Speaking of my damage yourself mid-range deck, whenever this attacks, deal 3 damage to your hero. Okay, so play this turn 3. Play your Vulture dude turn 4. Attack with this. So now you've got a 4/5, a 3/5, and a 3-drop all in play on turn 4. That's sick. You need to find ways to actually keep yourself alive. But the fact that this is, this is a 3-cost 4/5, that's huge. Significantly overstated, right? Like, you would frequently see 3-cost 4/4s with drawbacks. But often those drawbacks were like, this doesn't actually do what you want. This is a great way to enable your Vulture, great way to enable the Spider, right? There's the Spider, who's the 4/6 for 5 that has lifesteal when you play it if you've been dealt damage this turn. This guy's a great way to enable that. So I think like the self-damage mid-range deck, this feels like it's a pretty key part of that deck, because you want to be able to 0 mana activate your things that care about being damaged, and it's a great board control tool in itself, because it's a 4/5. Granted, if it's attacking into 3 drops or whatever, it's not necessarily saving you damage because it's an attack itself. But I think that this is definitely something that I can see fitting into that shell, that it could be a key thing for enabling your other powerful tools. All right, next up is Plague of Flames. 1 cost, destroy your minions. For each one, destroy a random enemy minion. So I think this is an interesting card for token type decks, egg type decks, for just clearing out big opposing things. You can have a bunch of small minions and kill your opponent's giants. Also, you can use this with like Mechathune. I actually played against Crip during the theory crafting thing. He was playing with Zoo deck. He zooed me for a while. Then at the end of the game, he was like, all right, Galvanizer, Mechathune, Plague of Flames, and I just died. So, that is a sort of corner case use of this. If you use all the rest of your stuff, it gives you a possible alternate win condition for your Zoo deck against control, which is pretty interesting. But, and also just like this can just be a reasonable card if you're playing against, like I said, like Conjurer's Calling decks, any kind of mid-range decks that are building up big guys. It can also just sort of sit in your hand if you're playing against other aggressive decks. Much like the sort of Mechathune Galvanizer, you're playing against another aggressive deck and they're like, okay, just beating you up with other small guys is probably not going to be great. But overall, it does give you some utility in certain matchups and also an interesting alternate win condition. All right, next up we have Rift Cleaver. This is a 6 cost 7/5 battlecry destroy minion. Your hero takes damage equal to its health. Again, this is enables your damage on your turn things, possibly. This is just a powerful card, right? A 6 cost 7/5 that kills your opponent's guy. Granted, like if you're killing a giant, you're killing, some big thing. It's a lot of life it's costing you. But, anything that leaves a big body behind and kills something is, pretty insane from a tempo perspective. What these sort of decks, the sort of, self-suicide type decks are going to define is like a balance between the life that they're paying and the life that they're somehow regaining. I do think the Deathweb Spider is likely to be a pretty key element of that. But I'm curious to see like what other tools are available, because I do feel like this like self-damage mid-range Warlock deck feels like it's getting a lot of support in this expansion, and I'm curious to see if it's going to have enough tools to really come together as a legitimate deck. But if it does, I do think this is a reasonable part of it. It does trigger your Vulture, and is this just a powerful card for a mid-range style deck that's trying to put pressure on and keep the opponent down. Next up is Sinister Deal. 1 cost spell, discover a Lackey. Obviously this is a, Lackey generator. If you're playing a deck that's using things that really care about Lackeys, you could easily, want Sinister Deal. I'm not convinced that you necessarily want, like, a ton of it. Granted, like, you're going to need a decent amount of Lackey generation if you are playing, say the Sacrifice of the Lackey, make a 5/5. You probably want more things that are Lackeys if you are playing the Lackey Legendary. So this can certainly see play there. The fact that you discover is pretty powerful too, right? Like, it isn't just generate a random Lackey. You have a better chance of getting, the powerful Lackeys. And the fact that Lackeys are very diverse in terms of what they do also means that, like, situationally, while most of the time it's like, yeah, you hope to get like stuff like Ethereal Lackey or Kobold Lackey. Situationally, you might want Titanic Lackey, you might want Goblin Lackey, you might want Witchy Lackey. And the fact that you can discover with this definitely makes it much more powerful in that case, giving you the sort of flexibility to adapt to the situation. So I do think that if there are these like Lackey-focused aggro decks, that this will likely see at least some amount of play in them. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a staple. And it might just be like a one-of because you want like a little bit more Lackey generation. Just matters about finding the balance. And last but certainly not least is Supreme Archaeology. You gotta do it in the Rafam voice, right? I am Rafam, the Supreme Archaeologist. I don't know if that's right. Didn't quite get the Rafam feel to it, but I do have the feel for this card. It is awesome. This card is actually just super, super cool. So when I first saw this, I was like, oh, this is a cool, like, alternate sort of, like, win condition sort of in a plot twist deck. Because this is basically a plot twist card. You don't play a quest that is, quest draw 20 cards, and then get a reward that says, draw cards in any way other than like shuffling cards in your deck and redrawing them, basically. Like, this is a plot twist card. And the thing about this is that in the previous builds of plot twist, you use plot twist basically as like your way to make a big board swing, right? You use plot twist with Dorian, you use plot twist with Betrug, and you're like, okay, let's go, let's like, make a big board of hopefully Death Rattle guys, or like whatever that generates something of value. And once you plot twist it a couple times, you're like, all right, well, my deck doesn't do anything powerful anymore. With this, though, you don't even have to line up your plot twists with your Betrug or your Dorian. You just plot twist because it advances this and gets you, toward your other plot twist. Like in my other plot twist deck, I cut Solarium because while I could like Solarium into plot twist and that was cool, it like rarely lined up that I wanted to do that because we just wanted to plot twist once. We didn't have enough room for the plot twist Solarium to really matter that much. But with this, plot twist Solarium is super powerful, right? You Solarium, you get 3 new cards, those tick your quest, then you plot twist, and then those all tick your quest, and you get to keep all the cards. And the actual quest reward means that having a bunch of expensive stuff, which is good with your plot twist Dorian or plot twist Betrug, isn't that bad, because once you get later in the game, you're like, okay, well, I can just draw a 0-cost 6-drop or 7-drop or 8-drop. And then the real win condition of the deck, almost always when I was playing it on the Theory Crafting stream, was just Rafam. That I would just Rafam, and then, I would start drawing 0-cost legendaries with the hero power. And, you could just do all kinds of crazy stuff, and it was super fun and actually quite powerful. So I'm in love with this card. I think that it's, super, super awesome. And I definitely plan to play this as my very first deck when the expansion goes live, because it is a blast. And I highly recommend you both tune in and check it out and also try the deck for yourself. All right, last up for our classes, we have Warrior. And Warrior is sort of an interesting spot right now because it's clearly one of the most powerful classes. It's always interesting to see how Blizzard and Team 5 end up sort of giving cards to classes that are already really good, right? Like, you don't want to see just a bunch more cards that are like, okay, these just go directly into the Control Warrior deck or Bomb Warrior deck that are already really good. So this is a great example of how to do it. Armegadillo, or Armegadillo, or Armagadillo. I don't know. Armegadillo. That's probably how it's pronounced. Armegadillo, 6-cost, 4/7 beast with taunt, and your turn give all taunt minions in your hand +2/+2. So clearly, this is a attempt to support a taunt version of Warrior rather than mech version, control version, etc. Bomb version. So like having a powerful legendary aimed at something which is completely different than what the class is doing right now is obviously a good way to support doing something different without giving power to what is already powerful. Taunt Warrior has already existed in like previous forms throughout the years. There was obviously the Quest Taunt Warrior, which was very different. Didn't really care about the taunts at all other than playing them so it got Sulfuras. But with this Taunt Warrior, it's clearly about your taunts, right? This is buffing your taunt minions. You want to have a bunch of taunt minions to buff up, to make them more powerful. Previously there was like Bolster, and I remember years ago, Bolster, I think it was a Goblin vs. Gnomes card. Something like that. It was an early expansion card. And it gave all your taunt minions +2/+2. Which meant that like you wanted to play it with a bunch of like cheap taunts usually, that you're getting like a bunch of like, bunch of bodies into play, then you're like, aha, Bolster. So you get a big effect on all these things that are already in play. It turned out being difficult because A, most cheap taunts are pretty bad. And B, you didn't really have like, that much, even if you did like, bolster them, they still weren't even that big. So it was a tough card to make work. With this, you're giving your taunt minions in your hand +2/+2, which is a much more powerful effect, I think, because you don't need to have already spent a bunch of mana up front and then spend the mana on the buff effect. This allows you to buff them, in your hand, so when they come down immediately, they're already powerful. Hand buffing, it's great. And +2/+2 is the amount that is like pretty meaningful, right? This obviously wants to go into a deck that has a bunch of taunt minions, and in particular, maybe taunt minions that make more taunt minions, which we will see. And I think this is likely to be a very powerful card in those style of decks. Granted, will Taunt Warrior be good? Will it be better than Bomb Warrior? Will it be better than Control Warrior? My guess is no. My guess is that the cards that support the Taunt Warrior style are unlikely to be as good as the stuff that is already powerful in Warrior. Playing a Taunt Warrior deck doesn't really let you use a lot of the cards that are sort of already the best in Warrior, like Brawl, right? If you're playing a deck that's built around like playing a bunch of big taunts, Brawl's not that good because you want your opponent to play a bunch of stuff, and then you're like, and not like attack it into your big guy. You just like play a bunch of stuff. Okay, I kill it. Same thing with like Whirlwind. You're like, okay, I kill it. So I am not super convinced that this is going to be a deck that really sees much play, considering Warrior does have such strong options already. In particular, the fact that Bomb Warrior sort of naturally counters the Singleton decks by shuffling multiple copies of bombs in their decks and turning off their Singleton cards means that, like, you've got to have even more incentive if you want to play Warrior to play like Taunt Warrior instead. And that seems like a high bar to pass. That said, it's entirely possible that Taunt Warrior is like better than a bunch of other decks, but just not better than the existing other Warrior decks, which is, again, this weird sort of tension that always exists when you already have a class with a lot of powerful stuff. So I'm going to try it for sure, because if nothing else, Armegadio is a hilarious name, and I want to say that when I play it. All right, next up we have Armored Goon, a Boulder Fist Ogre who apparently put on some armor. One of your hero attacks gain 5 armor. So this is both a reasonable tool for like a weapon-centric control / mid-range deck to sort of try and preserve a little bit of life without spending a bunch of resources actually gaining armor rather than actually playing proactive stuff. You can easily imagine like this being something that you play sort of on your sort of top end of your curve with like a Soul Thraze, right? You play like Soul Thraze into Armored Goon, then you're like attack your guy, attack your guy, attack your guy, and you gain a ton of armor from that while killing all your opponent's stuff. And I think that's like a reasonable option. That said, it's still a 6-cost 6/7, which if you don't have Soul Thraze is Boulder Fist Ogre, right? It's not a really impressive card at all. But if you are playing a deck that specifically has a multi-attack weapon like Soul Thraze, I can see this actually being something which is like powerful against other minion-based decks where you're intending to use the weapon in that way. Also, there's obviously with the Warrior quests, there's more incentive to play like a weapon-heavy deck, which means that you want some way to mitigate the damage that you're taking, especially once you get rid of your hero power, giving you armor. So I don't think this is like unreasonable. Like you look at it and it's like, oh, it's a Boulder Fist Ogre, right? Boulder Fist Ogre sucks, but the ability, can possibly gain you a ton of armor. If it's like remember Shield Bearer, right? Shield Bearer was a 5/5 that gave you 5 armor. If you're playing a deck that's attacking a lot, this is a 6/7 that gives you 5 armor or more, and that could be really good. So I actually think that this is much better than it looks in the surface. And I wouldn't be like surprised if this does see a decent amount of play, because Shield Bearer was good, and this is better than a Shield Bearer as long as you attack once with it in play. Next up we have Blood Sworn Mercenary, 3/3 for 3. Battlecry, choose a damage-friendly minion, summon a copy of it. So this is a card that got a lot of attention, mostly for its like combo kill potential with like Leroy and Inner Rage Rampage, which that's cool, I guess. I think this is more likely to be good as just like a Tempo Warrior card. Like I feel like this is a card that you're playing Tempo Warrior and you're like, okay, I play like a mid-sized thing, and I just get another one after I damage it with like some sort of Whirlwind type effect or whatever. I think this is a good card, and I think that yes, if the fact that it does give you the option to have like this burst kill in like a controlling Warrior shell is very significant. But I expect that this will actually probably see more play in like tempo style Warrior decks if those exist, because I think that this is like super strong in that style of deck. It's just really, really powerful. Any deck with like Whirlwind type effects, Inner Rage, whatever. This is just like gonna give you a ton of value and tempo generation. Excuse me, that I think can just be great. Like think about this like with Darius Crowley. And you're like, okay, I'll Darius Crowley your guy. I'll Bloodsworn Mercenary. I'll make another Darius Crowley that's already gotten the buff from the first Darius Crowley. His rush kills another guy. Really good. Really, really powerful. So I think this is a super cool card. Anything like this ends up being generally being pretty bad against like actual control warrior decks. Once you're spending cards, multiple cards to make more stuff on the board, you're getting brawled and being really sad about it. But overall, I think this is a super sweet card that I expect to see a great deal of play. Next up, we have Frightened Flunky. I think the reason this guy is so scared is because at any moment, Stonehill Defender is going to come back and be like, "Get out of my jungle. This is my job. You aren't wanted here." But anyway, 2/2 for 2, taunt, discover taunt. I mean, obviously, Stonehill Defender was really good. This is not Stonehill Defender because A, it's a warrior card. So you can't play it in Paladin, which is where Stonehill Defender was generally the best. But the fact that it's a warrior card means that it's more likely for it to discover itself because of the bias toward warrior, class cards whenever you have a discover. So you could like Frighten Flunky into Frighten Flunky into Frighten Flunky into Frighten Flunky. You can't keep Armadillo in those. Armagadillo. Jesus, I'm never going to get that right. Armagadillo. You can't, because you got to keep playing them to get them in line or whatever. But he also very likely to discover a Megadillo. So you can, like really end up buffing these big hands of taunts and such, which can be very, very powerful. So I think this is clearly, going to be, if there's a Taunt Warrior deck, this is a key card in it, right? Much like I said before, I'm not really super convinced that Taunt Warrior is going to be good enough to at least eclipse the other warrior decks. That doesn't mean it won't see any play, because it is a new hotness as opposed to, sort of being old and busted like the other warrior decks. So like week 1, I would expect to see this guy a lot playing Taunt Warrior. As the weeks go on, I expect that Warrior will, likely return back to being Control Bomb rather than Taunt, because I do think those are likely to be overall stronger. Next up is Hack the System. Quest attack 5 times your hero, reward Enrathet's Core, which is summon a 4/3 Golem. After your hero attacks, refresh this. So, speaking of our Sulthraze deck, right? This is definitely an interesting card. Again, giving you another direction to take Warrior, not Taunt, not Bomb, not Control, not Mech, but hacking both, the system and your opponent's face. This is a weird card because there's natural negative synergy with having a significant number of weapons in your deck because, well, you're going to draw a bunch of weapons. And yes, upgrading your hero power to be this means that your hero is going to, rather you're going to get more value from each of those weapons, but like over, how many weapons do you play to actually turn this on, right? Like, what are you actually including in your deck in order to justify, like playing this and actually consistently enable it early enough? I don't know. So I'm a bit skeptical of this, especially because, like a lot of the powerful decks, like your weapons are going to suck, right? And if this deck ever does get powerful, it's like, well, people play a bunch of weapon removal and it really sucks. I don't know. Maybe you're playing this in like Sulthraze. I mean, like Sulthraze is definitely in this deck, right? Sulthraze is like the most powerful card with like this and with the Ogre guy. But like, what are you playing? You're playing War Axe? You're playing Weapons Project? Weapons Project, gives you 3 attacks. It's like a 2 cost for 3 durability. But what else are you playing in addition to that? I don't know. It's definitely something that I think feels difficult to like figure out exactly how to build the deck around it. And maybe we'll find it. Maybe we'll find that with like, you just need Weapons Project Sulthraze and you complete this, very easily and consistently, and there's not too much overlap in terms of your weapons. What does your Sulthraze Weapons Project deck look like, Because Sulthraze is like, oh, I'm spending, 6 mana and I'm doing all this damage to my weapon, and then it's like Weapons Project is like, haha, I'm giving you a bunch of armor. I don't know. I do think it's cool, I'm probably going to try out every single quest deck at some point, but this is one of the ones that I'm probably less excited about because it feels like, again, playing enough weapons to justify, including this, to be able to actually activate it has such negative synergy that you end up with hands that just don't do anything. All right, next up is Into the Fray. This is the singular activation of Armagadillo, Armagadia, whatever. Give all taunt minions in your hand +2/+2. This is, definitely powerful with a handful of taunt minions, right? You're getting a ton of stats off of this. 1 cost. I mean, compare this to like Smuggler's Run, right? Smuggler's Run was actually like, an okay card in the hand buff paladin type decks, and it was +1/+1. And if your deck is like, a bunch of taunt things, +2/+2 from the 1 card, super powerful. So I think this is obviously another card that is likely to be a centerpiece of the Taunt Warrior deck if it does exist. Probably a very powerful version of it because it can actually give you this like tempo opportunity to get big things into play faster. If you draw a hand that's like, just a bunch of taunt minions, 1 Into the Fray, you're like, okay. So you have 4 cards in hand, 4 taunts in hand, and you play Into the Fray. You're just spreading so many stats out across a bunch of guys, and especially if you have anything like with the like self-duplicating guy, who we'll get to in a moment, it just ends up being worth a lot. You can play this with Vargoth, right? You're just like, okay, Vargoth Into the Fray. And I don't know what other spells you have with your Vargoth in this deck, but that is a ton of stats that give you both tempo and value because, you're upgrading the power level of everything and making it that much harder for your opponents to kill it. Next up we have Live Wire Lance. 3-cost 2/2 weapon. If your hero attacks, add a Lackey to your hand. I'm not super excited about this card. Warrior doesn't really have great ways to use lackeys. Warrior doesn't really have like sacrifice your guys. Warrior doesn't really have a swarm strategy that cares about having a bunch of 1/1s. It just doesn't really excite me here. Like the weapon is inefficient. Like you're not like a 3-cost weapon that does 2 doesn't even kill like a Blink Fox or a Clockwork Goblin. It just doesn't do enough. So I'm really unimpressed by this. I don't even think that this is a card that I'd want to play in like the Hack the System deck, right? Because I think that it's just so low impact. I feel like maybe you're playing like upgrades and Greenskin with this, and you're getting a bunch of lackeys. But then what are you doing, right? Because like you're not like Rogue that has like Shadow Step and combo cards and Van Cleef and like Spirit of the Shark and all these ways to really take advantage of the lackeys. You're not playing Warlock, who has like all these ways to like sacrifice them and like all these specific synergies with them. Shaman also has like naturally cares about having big boards with things like Bloodluster Stormbringer, or has like the Wasp for synergies. Warrior just has nothing, right? Has nothing in particular that cares about the lackeys. So this makes it feel like pretty low impact and unexciting in the class. So this is one of the cards that I'm probably least excited about. Next we have Plague of Wrath. 5-cost, destroy all damaged minions. As if Warrior needed more mass removal. This card is very powerful. It is just like, another card that can be like very strong in Control Warrior. As it stands, like Control Warrior already has like Warpath and Brawl. And this is, another way that you can combine with Warpath to effectively be more brawls. This card is super strong. And obviously it's not good against a bunch of small minions. But it's good against, in combination with like any number of ways to damage your opponent's stuff. Really good against big minions. It does kill your own minions, but if you're playing Control Warrior deck, you mostly don't care about that. This card I just think is super good. At like 10 mana, you can like Dynomatic into this and mostly clear any board. At any like 7+ mana, you can Warpath, play this, kill any board. But yeah, this card is just clearly really strong. And frankly, I don't know that Warrior needed more mass removal, but they got it. So I think this may actually just be good enough to like make Warrior be good against Conjurer Mage, right? Conjurer Mage, like typically it's like, okay, well you only have so many brawls and whatnot. It's like, well, if I Plague of Wrath plus Warpath, I have 2 Plague of Wrath plus 2 Warpath. Can I just kill enough Conjuring boards that they don't matter, right? Plus 2 brawls. I don't know. I think this is just a super strong card that just gives Warrior so much mass removal. That I'm frankly a little scared of it. Speaking of removal, Restless Mummy. This card is nuts. This card is just nuts. 4-cost, 3/2 Rush Reborn. So, this either kills one big thing, does 6 to it, or kills 2 small things. 2 3/3s for 4 mana. Speaking of having a lot of removal, right? Like, yeah, you can play this instead of Militia Commander. You can play these in addition to Militia Commander, and just more ways to kill more things. I think this is like probably a better card than Militia Commander, right? Because Militia Commander is mostly like, okay, I kill your thing, and I don't care that much about the body sticking around. This can kill like a slightly bigger thing than Militia Commander, and it can kill 2 things. This card is just so good. It's good in control. It's good in aggro. It's good in temp. It's just like this card is just bananas. Yeah. I feel like nothing's ever going to live against a Warrior anymore. Not that it did, but it definitely won't live now. So, I don't know. I think this is like, again, I think this card is nuts. I think this card is going to be like a staple in like pretty much every Warrior deck because it's just so good. Yeah, it's multi-shot that could just stay in play, right? And gets to attack wherever it wants. It's just so good. So good. And last, but certainly not least, Tomb Warden. This is a 8-cost 3/6. With Taunt, Battlecry, summon a copy of this minion. So, for 4 mana, you get +1/+3 to a Serenite Chain Gang. And it's a mech! The mech part of this is kind of scary. Because, just more big, impactful stuff that you can get off of, Omega Assembly, that you can get off of Delivery Drone. Also, this is clearly just a powerful card that goes into the Taunt Warrior decks. This is like, your sort of big thing that you build toward. Is like, okay, I Armadillo this, or Armadillo this again, with my second one that I got off of my Shaggy whatever Discover guy. And then I play my buff thing, and then boom! Just play a board, 2 of these that have +4/+4, +6/+6. Just sick. But yeah, I think this card is like not something you just like naturally play. You're not going to play this in a deck that doesn't have taunt synergies that buff it, because 2 3/6s for 8 is not really that exciting. But if you do have the buff synergies, it's powerful, and obviously if you get this off of any of the mech discover things, it is powerful, especially with Dr. Boom, because, you know, just rush down small things and then defend yourself. So overall, I feel like there are some cool things for new types of warrior decks. I'm more excited for the sort of tempo type warrior deck / taunt warrior deck than I am for the weapon warrior deck. But I do think there's maybe something there. But mostly, I'm kind of sad about the Mummy and the Plague, because I feel like it just gives so much more removal to, you know, a class and a deck that already has so much removal that it's so frustrating to play against. And I'm not really sure what direction you really want to go to combat that at this point, but we shall see.